Whenever you ask someone from America what some of their favorite fun places from childhood to go are, they might tell you Disneyland, Disney World, Six Flags, Legoland, or maybe even Chuck E. Cheese's. But what happens when you're a millennial or older person from Generation Z, and you grew up right before the bridge of a huge economic recession? What if your parents don't have enough money to take you on some of those big budget vacations that you see on TV? Unfortunately, I had to suffer through that as a child. My family had already been suffering through financial loss before due to some personal issues going on at the time, and I'd always get upset seeing and hearing kids at school talk about how amazing those places were. I didn't end up going to an amusement park until I was about 13 years old. I went to Six Flags and a few other parks, and they were fun, but even as a massive animation fan, I'm still sad that I've never been able to get a chance to go to Disneyland, Disney World, or Universal. I was originally supposed to go to Disneyland during the summer of 2020, but, of course, COVID hit, and it wasn't really possible, or at least it wouldn't be the same. COVID also canceled my plans to visit Japan for the first time, and I really wanted to head down to Nintendo World, but I don't really have the money. But what was a kid like me left to do back in an economically poor time? There were some days where we couldn't even afford cable or internet. Sure, I'd go to the neighborhood park and meet some new friends, I'd sign up for clubs at churches, I went to the movies a lot. There were a few pizza places with arcades, and independent places very similar to Chuck E. Cheese in my area. But what was the biggest alternative? You're a kid, you're bored out of your mind, you're hungry, and you want a place where you can run around and be hyper? Well, you might be surprised at what I'm referring to, unless you've read the type. Anyway, I don't care what anyone says, I love McDonald's. I know some people don't like their food. If you're a professional food critic, you've probably expressed how you'd rather eat shit. But I don't know, I personally have just never gotten sick of it. I admire the dedication the restaurant has to getting orders done as quickly as possible, and the food has always tasted good to me, even though it is clearly cheap. Their burgers, their fries, their chicken nuggets, their burritos, pancakes, hash browns, ice cream, milkshakes, even if it is horribly bad for you and could potentially be one of the reasons why so many people in this country are obese, the fact that you can get out and grab a bite without any restriction is a plus in my book regardless. McDonald's is what represents America. It's an icon. Churches have their crosses, other places have their mascots, and McDonald's has those glorious golden arches. Oh, also, fun fact, the M logo was actually inspired by the design of large breast, which is a little offensive, but who gives a shit? I guess that perverted marketing move worked because it garnered to grab enough people's attention to get there. I can't imagine a world without that thing. In fact, when the character designer for Nintendo's Mario was sketching out the character, he wanted to carefully make sure that Mario's M on his cap didn't look too similar to the McDonald's logo. Obviously, this decision was made to avoid copyright infringement. But believe it or not, McDonald's actually saw potential in it. They acknowledged Mario's growth and popularity, noticed the M on his cap, and saw it as a marketing opportunity. They literally called Nintendo and asked if it could look more like the McDonald's logo. Nintendo declined this idea, though it wouldn't surprise me if this is the reason why N64 and GameCube kiosks existed in the restaurants. Yeah, that's right. If you were a kid, couldn't afford any consoles, and wanted to get your greasy little burger fingers on an N64 or GameCube, you could play them at some McDonald's. Unfortunately, because they didn't want kids hogging up time on the system, not allowing anyone to share, some of these kiosks would purposely stop gameplay to prevent any bratty drama. Chances were if the kiosk was at your McDonald's, it did this. You'd barely have enough time to complete one level of Super Mario 64. However, there were a few games like Super Smash Bros. Melee where this problem didn't occur. I wasn't really able to experience this, unfortunately, since my local McDonald's didn't have any of these. However, apparently there's some McDonald's out there in my state that still have these. Yup, some McDonald's still kept their GameCube and N64 kiosks. They've gotten pretty old and dirty over the years, but I gotta give mad respect to these places for not just full-on destroying them. If Nintendo allowed this, it wouldn't shock me if this is also the reason why they allowed Mario toys to be sold in recent years. Oh wait, I guess Burger King just recently sold Nintendo toys too. Although McDonald's was also selling Pokemon cards during that same exact time Burger King was doing that. Oh, that reminds me, the toys! Happy Meals were the biggest reason why I went over to this place. I remember as a kid, I'd see all these cool action figures online that I wanted so badly, but they were way too expensive. But McDonald's somehow managed to pull it off. These things were basically like mini figurines. They could move, they posed, some would talk. It was amazing. I once binged a bunch of Pixar movies after I saw The Incredibles in theaters, and boom, all of a sudden McDonald's starts selling Pixar toys. Anytime a new animated movie or big film was coming out, McDonald's would sell toys of it. Hell, they even did Avatar. Sometimes these toys were the reason I found out about a movie or show in the first place. Happy Meals would also have these cool games on the sides of their boxes, like crossword puzzles or facts, and at the bottom of them they'd tell you what toy McDonald's was going to be selling next. I remember I got so excited once thinking they'd introduce some new Pixar or DreamWorks movie if I looked at what toys they were selling next, but nope, it ended up being Polly Pocket. I'll be honest, McDonald's wasn't the only place that did this. Burger King did it too, and I typically go to both, especially since Burger King would advertise for whatever upcoming SpongeBob special was coming. But McDonald's also pulled a few interesting moves with these. In the 90s, during the Great Beanie Babies phase, Thai produced new teeny Beanie Babies, which were much smaller version of pre-existing beanies. They'd make new ones yearly. And these things sold like hotcakes. Obviously none of them are of any value now since Thai mass-produced them, and I wasn't really alive during this era, but according to my dad, he had friends his age begging him on the phone asking if he could help them collect these things at McDonald's. My grandparents also had several of them. They all ended up donating them to me when I was younger. I had a small obsession for them too. Not because I was curious if they'd become valuable or anything, I just genuinely liked the look and idea of them. I'm pretty sure I also have almost every 90s Beanie Baby ever made because of it. I still see a lot of people on eBay who aren't aware of the mass production of Beanie Babies that try and sell their toys for hundreds to thousands of dollars even though they're not really worth anything. And really, the only Beanie Babies that are worth that much money are the original ones from 1991, which had a completely different tag from any other Beanie Baby after that time. There is, however, one rare and valuable teeny Beanie Baby, Rory the Lion, which was only selected to a few groups of people, and for some reason that one was never mass-produced. Even though McDonald's mass-produced other Beanie Babies to the public later that were originally sold exclusively to certain people or areas. The fact that I couldn't live through that Beanie Baby craze phase is unfortunate, but I did get to see McDonald's selling Beanie Babies at one point when Thai celebrated the 25th anniversary of their company, with the bears based on their mascots. That's another thing I always liked about McDonald's, man. It had character. They made animated mascots for a goddamn food restaurant. Obviously to attract kids, which probably wouldn't work nowadays considering how infamous clowns are today. I'm sure many kids, and probably even adults, including myself, find that creepy. The Hamburglar character actually used to look a bit more menacing until several parents started calling and complaining to the company that kids were frightened by it. Though believe it or not, these characters lasted for a very long time. Even I myself remember seeing them in commercials. I remember during elementary school, McDonald's did this thing called the McTakeover, where they would raise money to help our school's education. It was really neat because I'd get to see all my friends from class hang out on the playground. Usually when I'd go to McDonald's as a kid and meet someone that I really liked, I never saw them again. The McTakeovers usually had you meet Ronald McDonald too, and he would act exactly like the actual character. I'm pretty sure when I met him I asked how Grimace was, and he laughed saying he was jolly as usual. I remember being so surprised how accurate it was, and when my mom drove us back home, I was shocked to see that his van was parked next to ours. How did I know that it was his van? It had a giant Ronald McDonald bumper sticker on it. I guess I should probably talk about the characters themselves. There's not really a whole lot to talk about, but they definitely have personality. Ronald's the happy-go-lucky, super friendly high authority. He's also kind of the voice of reason, and I believe he's supposed to be some sort of magical being. He'd always be doing cartoonish tricks in the commercials, with a rewritten version of the song Do You Believe in Magic playing. Grimace, his best friend, is a slow, happy, purple thing. I never really understood what exactly Grimace was supposed to be. I always assumed that he was just some sort of burnt nugget or something. But no, he's just some purple being. It's kind of like the characters in Rayman. You don't question what the hell they are, they just exist. In the old 50s commercials, he was actually originally evil and would steal milkshakes with his 4 arms. There was also a Shamrock Shake Grimace who was green. Then one day he just became Ronald's friend and had 2 arms. I remember seeing tons of YouTube videos about this. Apparently there's a place called Giboya Quarry in Ohio where you can actually go scuba diving and find an evil Grimace's head just sitting in there. It's a piece from one of those old McDonald's playgrounds. It's pretty creepy. Anyway, the reason why I've been talking about this character for so long is because he's kind of my favorite one. I don't know why. There's also Birdie. She's a kind bird that really likes flying, even though she's not very good at it and she's clumsy. She was made to promote the breakfast items at McDonald's. Then there's Hamburglar. He's obsessed with hamburgers, steals hamburgers, and pulls tricks on people. Something I always liked about these guys was the world they lived in, McDonald's land, a world filled with everything McDonald's. I also liked how the playgrounds tried capturing that same playful vibe from the commercials. Some of them even had hamburger seats. I could talk about Fry Guys, Mayor McCheese, the pirate, Moon Guy, the science dude, and the little food characters, but they're also one-dimensional and already in a one-dimensional cast of characters. Despite that, there were a few small cartoons based on them. Quality-wise, none of them are really that good. The Adventures of Ronald McDonald Mctreasure Island was the first attempt McDonald's made at making an animated short film based on these characters, and it's clearly pandering to the youngest demographic possible and not really worth watching despite its decent animation for its time. It uses the same annoying, random kid no one cares about meets cartoon characters trope. Klasky Csupo, the same company that made Rugrats and Duckman, also made a short animated series based on them called The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald. They were short 40-minute VHS tapes that you had to buy at McDonald's, and you get a free milkshake with it. I have to say again, quality-wise, it's not that good. I don't really like how the company designed its characters, and it really shows when you compare it to how they were being advertised at the time. The originals have some pretty amazing designs in contrast, whereas the cartoon looks like a gross mess. I guess the only reason I find it charming is because I have nostalgia for it. One of the VHS tapes became lost media for a very long time, believe it or not. I remember in the early days of the Lost Media Wiki, everyone was trying so hard to find the Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald, Legend of McDonaldland lock. People even made ridiculous creepypastas and conspiracy theories about it. And it turned out it was actually sold exclusively online for a short amount of time, and not sold at McDonald's. Some guy on 4chan had it and was willing to sell it for thousands, and later someone who had the tape eventually uploaded the entire thing. It was crazy. Anyway, back to the subject of the restaurant itself. Even though I've implied this place isn't exactly superior to another place like Disneyland or anything, not even close, there is actually a Chuck E. Cheese equivalent to McDonald's in Orlando, Florida. It's basically a giant arcade with a larger menu. They have more ice cream, desserts, and they even still serve pizza. Yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but in the 70s to the 90s, McDonald's temporarily delivered pizza, but it wasn't selling well and it took a lot longer to make. They also used to serve corn dogs. In some other countries, McDonald's actually serves spaghetti too. Don't even get me started on that whole Szechuan sauce fiasco that Mulan and especially Rick and Morty started. Yikes. Also, I really miss their Dippin' Dots, and I love their triple cheeseburgers. Overall, I know this place isn't exactly loved by everyone, and to some degree there are some good reasons. They used to treat their animals horribly a long time ago, but I personally have a special place for McDonald's deep inside my heart, which will probably stop working if I eat too much of it. Anyway, making this video made me really hungry, and I've probably made a few of your guys' stomachs growl, so I'm gonna go head over there and get some food. Good night, and like always, I don't know how to end video.